Hey David, so I just wanted to touch up on, our conversation that we had last week. We had a great conversation. I know there's some things that, we wanted to say to each other or wanted to hear about each other and wanted to just follow back up on that. So, how's your day so far, by the way?
So far, so good, man. It's crunch time at work, so it's full court press and just a scramble.
Yeah, end of the year stuff, right?
End of year stuff, man.
Yeah.
So it's catering to all the clients and then all internal partners and everything else. So
Myself, me. I
yourself,
hope I'm not
yep,
causing
yep.
you too much.
You're included in that bunch.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so it's an all out scramble.
Uh-huh.
And as somebody who is a pleaser by nature, I'm always trying to make sure I get everything done. You know, I know there's a lot of things on the balance for some people. So
So how do you find, and I'm asking because, I think that, we all can always learn from each other. How do you find order in chaos like this, like times like this?
um, order. Whew. So order in chaos, huh? So I mean, as far as yeah, my day always feels like, and I'm looking at a picture in the background. If you can see it, it's a snowstorm,
Okay.
and it's appropriate right now for this question
Mhm.
specifically because I feel like sometimes I feel like, and it's self-inflicted sometimes, but I am in that snowstorm. And if you ever been in a snowstorm, I'm from back east.
I
If you
have.
ever been, oh, yeah, of course you have.
Well, no, I
So
have driving through the snow from Tahoe back, so, but not as much as you guys over there.
yeah, so you know that snow, and it's almost blinding, and you're getting the snow. It never feels like it's coming from one direction, up, down, left, right. It feels sometimes even coming up. That's order in chaos is like it's almost so if I'm in keeping on this analogy of being in a snowstorm, it's almost like I got to put on those goggles, right? And just make sure that I'm focusing on one thing at a time. So I always try to start with a hierarchy of priority.
Mm.
My day starts around 6 o'clock, 6:30. I have about, I start a little bit earlier than that I have a little morning routine that I stick to. And then my work day typically starts around 6:30.
Mhm.
The reason for that is so that I have that a little bit of time when the world is kind of shut off. My work world is shut off, and I'm not getting the calls in yet. But right at 8:30, 9 o'clock, it's like ring the bell at the New York Stock Exchange and everybody goes bananas. You know what I mean? It's like Alibaba just went on sale. They just went on IPO, and it just goes bananas. So it's kind of how it is. But the chaos, even beyond that, like I get caught up in my own mind. My mind starts going quite a bit. So my chaos, the way that I'm able to manage that the best way I can, um, is by journaling and meditating.
Mm.
So typically my day starts around 4:30 or 5. So wake up, glass of water, meditation, journal, and then sometimes if I could squeeze in a bike ride, I do.
And your meditation, because I'm starting to get into more of a I would say a traditional meditation where you just kind of like let your mind be free, right? So that's what I've been told that meditation is kind of like how you should do. So what, I mean, how do you like prepare for that? Because you have an expectation that, okay, there is going to be some chaos during these times where you're going to have a pile of work. You already know it from the day before. So how do you just like get into that or calm yourself? What do you do?
Yeah. I always go with, for the most part, I've been meditating now for, gosh, man, consistently now about 4 or 5 years.
Mhm.
And really, really now I've been practicing meditation. How about that? And just really now I'm feeling like, and I say now within the last almost 2 years now, a year and a half, 2 years, really found a groove in my meditation. Um, I use an app. I use Headspace, which I
Mm.
love. So I use a lot of guided meditation. Excuse me. I use guided meditation like on YouTube. I just put in guided meditation. I'll use Mind Valley with Vishen Nakani. He has a great meditation. He has a 10-minute, 8-minute meditation, which is great. Kind of helps you get in line with the universe. And then I
You
have
are listening to someone talk or
they're
listen.
walking you through it. It's all guided. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And then I meditate before going to bed as well. So I put on noise canceling headphones, and even when I sleep, I put the noise canceling headphones on. I meditate, guided meditation, but to some degree. Um, yeah, so that's the way that I approach it. And I found a lot of solace, a lot of peace in that too. Sometimes it sometimes I'll get to a very calm place. That's what I'm usually typically trying to get to. And other times I don't really have an agenda. When I first started, I used to have this agenda, like, oh, I want to clear my mind. I want this. But it's really for me, I go into it now. I've listened to those guided meditations so much, you know, that I know, like, I'm in the zone. I know it's comfortable. I know where we're going. So it's very unique.
That's
It helps me quite a bit.
yeah. When I heard you say solitude, that hit home with me because throughout, our schedule throughout the day with workout, work, family, friends, all the other stuff that goes on aside of that, we're pulled so many different ways that there's a certain amount of time throughout your day, whether in your case it's in the morning, my case I would say it's in the morning and right before bed too, where I find some peace and some freedom. And I thought about it. I was like, oh, but how do I really get there though? And to me, I was like, it's my imagination.
Mm.
Like, that's when I find most peace and most freedom, when I just explore my imagination and let it, let it take me wherever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen your videos, man. You're a pretty creative guy. So, what type of creative things or imagination kind of things are you working on, or what were you actually doing to escape? I'd say those hustle and bustles of the day.
So it evolves through time, right? And we spoke about this. I think if you were to ask me 10, 15 years ago, it would be completely different.
Sure.
And that's, I feel like that's good. That's, you mentioned about building character where, I'm at a different place in my life where I morphed into someone where I know more about what I want in life. And for me, my creativity comes from imagination, and it comes from, like, I would say, curiosity too, to
Mm. Mm-hmm.
want to learn more about myself and the world.
Mm-hmm.
you,
Yeah.
we talked about some of the mentors from afar, which is what
Yep.
you got in my head now.
Yep.
And there's so much stuff to learn and experience. And when I listen to someone read a book or read something, even look at paintings, it resonates with me, and I want more and more of that. And I feel like I learn more and more about myself. So I would say, yeah, my imagination and my curiosity would be my main drivers in that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, if there was one characteristic that I could pass on to my kids, it would be curiosity. Um, it can be a blessing and a curse at times, right? In my personal circumstances, like I'm a very curious person. I I love understanding some of the nuances about all things that have no relevancy to my day to day.
Yeah.
I'm just I get curious. I can go down a rabbit hole either via YouTube or Wikipedia, and I'll start off looking up something about a planet, and then I end up something about something a medical device. You know what I mean? Like it's just a wide spectrum of curiousness. So,
Would you say you're a big kid at heart?
oh, I've never grown up.
Okay, so that's my mentality behind that because so we're taught so much, in junior high and high school. That's probably where it hit us. Where, okay, grow up. You need to be mature. You need to be, you know, a person that people will look up to. Where it doesn't mean that you can't be looked up to being a kid. It's just we lose touch of that as we get older. And of course, in certain environments, we have to be a, I would say, a more mature individual, right?
Sure.
But I feel like that's who I truly am. When I'm in touch with the child in me,
Yeah.
because then I'm not. My mind is free, as what I mentioned to you earlier, and I'm not super worried about the next day, about someone's talking about me, about how I look, about what I wear, what kind of car I drive. So I feel like when you're a kid, you lift rocks, you skip stones, you play with ants and bugs, and you know
Yeah. Yeah.
you can watch the birds outside all day. you know
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, those things are fantastic. I mean, I somewhere I tell my daughter all the time, like, just stay young, stay happy, stay. She's 6. The things that I celebrate with her are laughter. You know, um, really, really, it, it just goes by so fast, right? So I have 2 daughters. One of them is 6 years old,
How old is the other
and 2.
one? Okay, so still small.
Yeah. So one of the things I celebrate though is humor and laughter and her being silly and being herself. Um, I think you know we lose touch of that a little bit as we get older, and rightfully so. I mean, but at the same time, um, like to your point, like we lose those that innocence about ourselves, and which like kind of sheds a little bit off of who we are as a person, even like sense of humor wise. It's one of the things I really appreciate. Like I'm really into stand up comedy. Not myself, but I'm
Oh,
a
okay.
big
I was
fan.
like, I want to hear it.
Oh yeah, no, man, I don't have any jokes, but I'm a big fan of stand up,
Mhm.
and two reasons why is because one is um, they are undeniably themselves
Mhm.
for the most part, seemingly, right? And they just get to be silly, and I really appreciate that.
What do you like in stand-up
I
comedy?
like I like Bill Burr, Dave Chappelle, early Cat Williams before he went nuts. I like in just some of the classics too, like George Carlin.
Yeah.
I like the more the conscientious like comics. You know, but yeah. So Bill Burr is probably like my favorite. Cheeto Santino, like some of these
Yeah.
guys are
Yeah.
fantastic. So, but
I Russell Peters is probably my all-time favorite. He
oh
just,
sure,
he just makes racial jokes so funny. Like
yeah,
you don't get, if well, at least speaking for myself and the people that I watched it with, and know, you don't get offended. So I think you touched on this, what you were saying right now in more detail, and you elaborated more. But last week when we spoke, you were saying being authentic.
hmm
And speaking for myself, I think from being a child to an adult, I I lose touch. We lose touch of our authenticity, whether if it's trying to impress others, impress a girl, impress people in social media. so you kind of lose that, I feel like I'm, trying my best to be authentic, but then, there's times where like, okay, you know, was that really me? You know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's that. I mean, I've personally struggled with that too. Like, I think I know we touched on it last week too, but one of the things that I've talked to others about is is really showing up as your authentic self, and that often starts with vulnerability, right? Um, Being vulnerable is very difficult. I'll be first to admit it. As naturally, like as an alpha male, like, and that's how I was in it.
It's
Not
your
saying I'm an
mentality.
alpha male. My upbringing, where I came from, forced me to be
Tough
more
guy.
alpha. Yeah, where I came from very humble beginnings,
Mhm.
and so in it was feast or famine. That was so. Um, it was always being in that snowstorm, regardless of what season it was. It was which way of the snowflakes coming at you. You know, whether it was you know getting in the house early enough at night, or having a proper meal on the table. I have four older sisters, and it was just myself. Came from a single family household, and it was just my mom, and she worked five jobs, and just it supported five kids. You know, this lady was, I mean, good God, man. When I think about having a bad day, I think about her. I'm like, God, I don't have a bad day. Like, she came
You're
to this
being
country not
petty.
speaking a word of
Yeah.
English.
Little petty stuff.
Pardon?
Petty
Petty.
stuff.
It's all,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. It always could be worse, right? This is going to come full circle to what we're talking about. But she came to this country um, with not speaking a word of English. Five kids. I was the only one born in the States,
Where did she come from?
Spain. So and she's basically brought here and raised five kids, and she did it. She not only raised five kids, but there were times that I remember, and I grew up in, like I said, in pretty rough part of the city, and there were times when I remember distinctively. There was times when there wasn't enough spaghetti, and my mom would say, "Oh, like Mom, come to the table, come eat with us." She would say, "No, no, like I ate, I'm good. You guys eat." Only because there wasn't enough, right? So, and then like you were kind of like talking about like being vulnerable. So it's at that time, like so it was like growing up. I never felt like I went without, right? But then my mom did her best with the tools that she had, but at the same time, I grew up pretty quick,
Mhm.
right? And again, it was a pretty rough part of the city, and so I had to be alpha. I had to be macho in a way.
Macho man.
And then, so
Macho
it like,
Dave.
couple, yeah. No, I'm a big marshmallow though.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like I don't like fights. I don't like arguments. I don't like that negative confrontation. Um, but growing up, it was like I had to be this way. I had to be alpha. I had to always be charging because again, it was always feast or famine. And and it was being vulnerable was the last thing I could ever think that I could be. And it's something I'm working on. And I've worked on it. It's continuously being worked on.
I definitely want to get back to the vulnerability part because that has made sense to me when I met my acting teacher about 3.5 years ago or so. I met him, and he taught me to be more open to where I'm like I don't like fights, but you have coming from a tough guy background, or you know a clique with friends, the gym environment, we have to kind of be tough, right? But he kind of helped me, like understand that you can still be strong and vulnerable at the same time. And you find strength in vulnerability.
You nailed it. You nailed it.
But
It
I was just going
Go
to
ahead.
say, I was just going to say one thing that hit home with me was that, you said that you came from humble beginnings, a lot of sisters, a single mom, and I had a similar upbringing as that too. So, it was, tough at times growing up, but something that you touched up on was your mother, how she worked 5 jobs, and she probably wasn't more as accustomed to the West. Well, I mean, the American culture, right? Because she came from Spain, where, yeah, it's a Western world, but she may have had to learn a new language. And where do you think she found that strength from? Because being a single woman and a mom with 5 kids, that's tough. Not, I mean, I can only imagine just what my mom and your mom went through. Like, what do you think drove her?
Don't say the toughest. Yeah, I mean, good Lord, like that's what I'm saying. So I'm like, sometimes I look at I go home and I'm like, damn, I had a hard day. And I'm like, bitch, you did not have a hard day. You see,
Give
but
yourself
yeah, I mean,
a slap.
yeah. So the I think I mean, if you ever asked her,
Mhm.
I talked to her about this, right? Every now and again, I'm like, Mom, you did an amazing job, thank you. And she said I'd do it all over again. She obviously should do a couple things differently,
Mhm.
um, but she did it from a place of love and care. That's really where it came from. It was like, I've got no other choice. She was just a strong person, you know what I mean? So that character of being strong, like, is within her. Her focus, her whole, like everything about her was all about family. It was about her kids first. So if you have a goal, if you have a vision, or if you have something in some area that you want to succeed in, and there's this higher thing that you're attaching it to, you're going to get there no matter what. And that's what she did. Her purpose was providing for her kids, so by any means necessary, right? So 5 jobs to her was nothing, so just so as long as her kids didn't go without, you know so it was more, her strength came from her purpose, which were her kids.
I don't think that I've seen a bond as strong as a mother and their children.
Oh,
And
sure.
I've seen, and that goes with not only humans, but like I'm very fascinated with the animal kingdom. And the shows that we watch on Discovery Channel, Animal Planet, or National Geographic, you see that in animals where that bond is like unbreakable. They will risk their lives to attack or to defend. That's a better word, to defend something that's 5 times bigger than them.
Oh, sure.
So it's, and I think you said it best, the love and the purpose. So
Yeah.
that's something that, I see in my mom, and with her children and with me, and something that I feel like, I can try to, show to others, not only, well, I mean, meaning being more selfless and showing more love to and myself and vulnerability to really give to others.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I see. Hey, let me just. I'm just trying to clear this off because there we go.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I mean that's when people talk about like purpose a lot. This is someplace I struggled with. I think I was telling you, man, like my self exploration and my journey to just show up as a better person, you know, started 6 years ago. Really, when my the onset was like my daughter, right? My daughter Sophia, and it was really like, I want to be the best parent, the best dad, best, that I can be,
Mhm.
right? Um, and but I didn't know what best was. So I just kind of looked inward and started trying to work on myself, you know. Um, and it started like, so that's how I went down that journey of like becoming, trying to be better every day, better than I was yesterday, staying consistent, um, day over day, week over week, month over month, which is not always easy, right?
Oh,
For me, anyways. So that's how I my now like by like I and like looking at purpose and starting 6 years ago, like the folks I would listen to, like my mentors from afar, whether in books or, and then I actually hired an actual mentor as well, which was a game changer for me. Um, Everybody would really talk about purpose. And I felt so alienated because I'm like, shit, I don't have a purpose, right? And then there was one day, I can't remember her name, the gal that was the CEO of Yahoo, listening to an interview with her. And she said, I don't have a purpose. And in my mind, my ears perked, right? Because I'm thinking, like, somebody to that caliber doesn't have a purpose? How is that even possible, right? Somebody in her position doesn't have a purpose. That's crazy to me, right? She's done all these amazing things, but doesn't have a purpose. She said, my purpose is to sit on my porch with my two golden retrievers and have a glass of wine at the end of the day. Whatever I have to do in order to do that comfortably, that's my purpose. The means, not the end, but it's always the journey. And that was the light bulb for me. It was really appreciating the process and not really having a total purpose. So my purpose is not just one singular thing. I wish it was. My purpose is really a couple things, like getting better, providing for my family, becoming a better person to my, not only to my as a father, but to my friends and wherever I show up, you know.
and you would probably, what you mentioned, like your purpose would probably evolve through time, right? It's not like something where you said a singular, where it's like, okay, you know what? One day I want this, where, me being someone coming from like a gym environment for since I was in my mid-teens, my purpose that I thought was completely different from now. you know,
Oh, sure.
we talked about this where like, okay, and then when I was starting to work out, okay, my purpose was to have bigger muscles, have a six-pack abs, you know, have this, have that, try to get the attention from the girls and show off to the guys, and so that, and then, it changes through time and it constantly transform where
Sure.
the more you learn, the more you experience, the more things you're exposed to. And I think that that's when I heard you say you found meaning inside of yourself first, and that exploration of how you began, that hits home with me because I learned more and more throughout time trying to find meaning within myself instead of
Sure.
out, so
Yeah, that's huge, man. Like, I was, growing up, I too was all about the gym. And it was, now it's so funny because I was thinking about just this now talking to you about this, right? It, as we get, when we're going through those stages, we talked about those stages. I mean, I feel like males for the most part evolve at 18, 21, 25, 30, 35, 40 and beyond, right? So it's all those ages of different milestones that we shed, different snakeskins or different, and that the snakeskins akin to ego.
Mhm.
Early on, 18 and younger, we're in, for the most part, up and through like 25, 30, we are doing everything I was doing everything almost to feed the ego. How
Yes.
big can you get? How much can you lift? How much, do this, do that. But it was a lot of it was external. Now it's funny. Now the things that I do are completely opposite of that. I am trying to kill my ego,
Yes.
right? keep that in check. But I mean, the ego is a very fascinating thing. I'm super fascinated with that. In Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday I follow Stoicism quite a bit,
Oh, okay.
uh, and like Marcus Aurelius, and
Uh-huh.
really big fan of and Seneca. So that means the Stoicism means a lot to me. But in Ryan Holiday, who is a big proponent of Stoicism, has a book called Ego is the Enemy. Really kind of talks about how you're really trying to deflate your ego.
Mhm.
Um, but at the same time, I don't 100% agree with all of his theories. He's kind of he's it's almost his thought process about killing, ego is the enemy is very monolithic. It's not he doesn't really talk too much about the good parts of the ego. Ego can be great too. You need that to, I mean, in a competitive environment, you need that as well, right? So
I and then we talked about, Jordan Peterson, a mentor from afar, and I
sure.
heard he mentioned this in some of his talks where he's saying that, and I don't think he approached it in the ego terminology, but then he said that you have to be mean, you have to be a monster, where that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go pick fights and go do malevolent things to people, but more so that you're able to defend yourself and others around you in case of someone malevolent or something malevolent trying to attack you. And he said that, and then of course he says a lot better than I do, but he's saying that, if you're just super nice and super agreeable, you're that's not a virtue. It's not like something where, like, okay, you're just defenseless. But having a monster inside of you, but understanding that you can do these things, but being able to control that within yourself, he's saying that that's how you be more virtuous, right? Where so and that hit home with me because I do have thoughts that are not the nicest at times, whether if it's to someone I know, or and I don't mean that like I'm gonna I want to you know have that person wiped away forever. I just mean that you have these thoughts in your head where, and I think that that's human, right? Because I wouldn't say anyone or anything where I would want to harm anyone, but then when you're upset, when you're someone said something to you, that those things come up where you're like, okay, you know what, you're having bad thoughts, maybe you want to slap the heck out of that person. Or the other day I was at the grocery store, and some guy, he was trying to be macho and stuff like that, and then I was like, okay, I can react to it where I can snap back at him, or I can hey, and what I'm saying is there's times for that, right? But I was able to control myself where, okay, I'm not going to react to it. It doesn't bother me as much. And you touched up on this last week where you're saying, does that build character? And I've been thinking about that for the last week. I'm like, I think it does.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, as far I love, I'm a big fan of Peterson. Um, and what I love about him is, like him or not, he comes from a place of science, right? He comes from a place of truth. He's a truth seeker, and I'm not familiar with the internal monster, but I imagine we all have that at times. And somebody once told me, gave me the advice, because I've I've had my share of Nikes in my mouth, meaning I've put my foot in my mouth way too many times, because at times I was just hot headed and I just flied off the handle, and it was my emotions that got the best of me, which in a couple of things wasn't it's not always the best approach, and for the most part, for me, it wasn't. It's not ever the best approach. Now I take a step back and I evaluate the situation. And I'm always thinking, somebody once upon a time gave me advice and said, "Hey, David, does it make you money? Does it make you happy? If it's neither one of those things, you should probably leave it alone. And in all due time, you'll have a better reaction. You'll have a better response. You'll be able to think through it. So as if you sleep on it, you've that old saying like, hey, sleep on it. If you're feeling the same tomorrow, you have no idea how many draft emails that I have. Because I'll draft an email. I'm like, let me sit on it. When I go back and look at it, I'm like, oh, thank God I didn't send that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I agree. I mean, because no matter how much work that you do, or I do, or anybody else, I feel like that's a very small group of people. So you do need to have that strength. You do need to have that line within, but it's a tamed lion, right? To be able to call out when needed. But at the same time, that person in the grocery store, and it was funny on Sunday, I was driving and my temperature went up. So I was driving, I was coming out of my street, and this guy's standing in the middle of the road and just looking at me, gave me a dirty look. But I'm waiting for this guy. I have my whole family in the car, and I'm seething. I'm like, all right. And he's like waving somebody else on. Waiting. I mean, it's now he's in the middle of the road, and so like I'm trying to go. I'm like, all right. He's just sitting there, not doing anything. I'm going around him. He looks at me, does this, and moves in front of my car. Now I'm like, it frustrated me to no end. It really did. And here's the thing. This guy's not talking about it to anybody else right now. I am.
Yes. Yes.
He won. Regardless of what happened, he won. And right. So, and I gave it that much energy. And so I laugh about it now. I'm talking with you about it, and it's just something I just remembered. But it stayed with me for a little bit. But at the same time, not a lot of people, again, are not working on themselves. And the more this is from my experience, the more I started working on myself, right? I realized how what's the word I'm looking for, but like, how much others did not. And in fact, being in a corporate setting, I remember one of the first times. I'm not going to mention any name. Being in a corporate setting, you end up, and even out a lot of different places, you realize sometimes how either narcissistic somebody could be, and you're like, oh my goodness, and you identify these little things, and you just like, I hope I'm not perceived that way or do that thing. So it's only like you really only can work on yourself and show up as your best self for others,
So, David, I think that story that you just told, it's not a loss, right? We're human. You acknowledge that to me, you acknowledge that, hey, you know what? Your blood temperature did rise and he did get a rise from you, but you know that you're constantly improving and you didn't react to it and it goes back to talking about Jordan Peterson and being a monster, where what if he tried to do something where you needed to be a monster? Or what if, you went out and then, or something happened and it triggered something else where your family was in a car. Now your family could be in danger, not only yourself. So then, like, I think how he said with that monster part is where, there's times where, okay, you control that monster inside of you, which you did. You raised up your blood, your blood was rising, but you controlled that monster, and you live to fight another day. You live to learn from it, build the character. And that's admirable, because you could have easily went out and said, hey, hon, let me go, knock this guy upside his head, or let me go run this guy over, which people do because they don't have that virtue of, okay, I'm going to control myself.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't any part of me like I wanted to beep and whoa around them and stuff like that, but I was almost laughing. I'm just thinking, this guy the entitlement that this guy has was just it was brutal. And so it was just that. I mean, so kind of going, yeah, having that line within and making sure that yeah, for sure. And like some of my best friends who like do like either boxers or mixed martial arts and stuff like that. I never got involved with that, but boxing way back in the day. Um, but some of my best friends that look very, very, very unassuming, you know, are the most gentle human beings on the planet. But they can take somebody's head off in an instant. You know what I
Because
mean?
they
So it's
know
very
that.
interesting.
They know
They
that.
they get it
That
out
practice.
too. What's
Let,
what's
let me
that?
let me ask you this though, David. So you were in law enforcement before. You told me that you were in law enforcement, right?
Yep.
What did you do?
Yep. I was a deputy for the Plymouth County Sheriff's Department in Massachusetts.
Mhm. So did I mean in that environment, how would you say your ego was like? Because we talked about ego, where I mean, did you constantly have to be the tough guy or
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you couldn't be a marshmallow by any means. You always had to have your head on a swivel. Um, but it certainly wasn't work for me. I did it almost 2 years post academy, graduating from the academy. Um, and I worked Plymouth County Sheriff's Department. Plymouth County was a minimum maximum security prison. So you've seen anybody from somebody who had one too many DUIs to somebody who was awaiting trial for murder. It was a wide array of different people. And so yeah, I mean, you at that time talk about like lifting and stuff. I was like trying to be. I mean, I'm not a big guy by any means. I don't have not tall, I'm not big, but I had to play the part. And fitness
you're
was always something
you're
that
big in spirit and in mind, so and heart.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So like fitness has always been a part of my life, but back then it was again like playing the part, and like it was really for utility too. It was a purpose for me,
Yeah.
being stronger in training. And going into the academy, I'll never forget defensive tactics.
Mhm.
So we had defensive tactics, and the instructor said, he has everybody in the classroom, and he's like, look, I want to. What's the one weapon that you will always have on you, on your person, that is it could diffuse a situation or it can amplify a situation. So everybody's raising their hand like, oh, everybody's thinking like, oh, what's on that duty belt?
Mhm.
Saying, oh, it's your gun, it's your ASP, which is a baton, or it's your spray. He's like, nope, nope, nope. And he's like, all right, it's your hands, it's your feet. Nope, nope, nope. It's your mouth. It can get you into a situation, and it can easily get you out of one.
I love.
Right. Right. And then it can also it could it could make somebody anxious too. It can amplify it. So if you don't have a little bit of that awareness of tone, if you don't have that awareness of kind of that emotional intelligence of knowing your audience,
Mhm.
you could really bring a seemingly um, calm situation into a rocky one really fast. So I'll never forget that. That was one thing that I'll always remember, from defensive tactics. And yeah, I mean, being a deputy in the sheriff's department, it wasn't anything that I wanted to, I mean, pursue after seeing a few things.
How did you find that poise in that situation? Because during that time, you said it earlier, where you were, I mean, and we all are still learning about ourselves and growing, right? But you were the macho man, the macho Dave. You were the big tough guy, in and outside. And when confrontations like that can easily occur, which we see it through, we hear it on the news every day, we see it on TV, where nowadays we laugh about certain things, right? Certain interactions where someone is being an asshole while we're driving, in the freeway, or at the grocery store. But you then with your you're armed, and not only with, with your weapons or your utility belt, but then also, just your mind, the weights, the monster in you, like how do you find poise in situations to where, okay, I need to calm down. I know you touch on emotional intelligence, but then where would that come from for you not to just snap at any moment?
I mean, I was never that kind of guy, ever. Like I never was a confrontational guy. Um, like I said, I mean, I grew up in that environment, but I didn't like that environment.
Mhm.
Um,
But that
you know,
environment didn't come to you though.
I invited myself into that environment even more so. You're like, yeah, like who's the dumbass that applies for, to be a deputy? Uh, but like I said, I don't. I'm more of a marshmallow than anything
you're,
else, man.
you're you're a lover, not a fighter.
Softie, dude. I'm a softie. I'm a giant softie, man. So like, it's like it's so I never really I always felt anxious in those times. But thank good like I said, back then I was a completely different person. In fact, I probably wouldn't even hang out with that David back then. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? Like I was a completely different person. It wasn't anybody who I don't even recognize that person anymore, right? Um, and not that I'm ashamed of that, but it's just more like I matured and I've grown. But in those times, it was really I didn't think about it. I never really like it was like this is what I'm doing. I'm here. It is what it is. I got this at that time when I got this position um, after like 6 rounds of interviews and panel interviews and background checks, and I dropped out of school to take this job, and I was like, this is amazing, right? And it was, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity and the growth and the experience that I got from it. But being in it at the time, I didn't see anything different. And it goes to say about like all environments though, right? Um, it's like a lot of times those that conversation that's on a loop or that environment that's like everything that's kind of created in a the cottage culture, right? So the cottage that I was involved in, like the environment that I was involved in, everybody was. I know anything else outside of that, right? So even growing up, although I came from humble beginnings, I had 15, 20 friends, and that all my buddies, that we all hung out together all the time. We were very, very tight knit.
Did you guys have a
And
click name? Were you guys
no,
like,
no, no, we weren't like a
what
no,
was
we
your
were like a man, dude.
what
We
was
were
your
just
name?
like it was all like everybody who played some type of sport or something, like all my good buddies, man. It was like all like really good friends of mine. But even being in that environment, 15, 20 people, there was probably like two of my friends who had a mom and dad at home. You know what I mean? Everybody came from broken homes, but none of us thought anything different. Like I don't think we ever thought about going without because dad wasn't around. My father wasn't around, and Ray's father was, and Eric's wasn't, and Adam's wasn't. And so I never thought of anything different, and I don't think they did either, right? Because we were all kind of enmeshed. We're all kind of the same. Same thing with like in going through the prison system and going through the academy and working with those folks. I spent all my time with those folks and my partner, like the guys that I rode with, the guys that I went to the academy with. I didn't know any different, right? I didn't know the other side of that. I didn't know, finance, which we're in now, right? So that's all I knew. So once you're in an environment and that's all you know, I don't if you don't have the experience of seeing the other side,
Perspective.
it's what you know, it's your perspective, right? It's what you know. So, I didn't have anything to compare it to. So I didn't have any insight to or poise to have, to change myself into or develop a different um, person or pull something out of me in said environment, said situation. But
You- So you mentioned that, you were raised, you had four sisters and your mom, your dad wasn't in the picture. Same thing with me. I have five older sisters, younger and a younger sister too. So I was raised with women, but like you, I did have a lot of friends. A lot of them were older than me, and we were like a family, like brothers, where.
sure.
But I was going to ask you where you were saying that, you are someone that's, not a fighter, you don't like confrontation, and like, do you feel like the influence, because okay, coming from a, well, men and women, it's not, both can be fighters, right? But I mean, whether if that's verbal or physical, but coming from a tough environment with the friends and coming from a household with women, was that balance for you? Like, do you feel like, because women, okay, they're the more emotional and, generally more sensitive, gender, where men, it's usually the tougher, the more, you know assertive, with your friends. Like, did that help you with some balance?
Um, I don't know, man. Like, it's interesting, man, that you're asking that because I never saw any difference. To be very, very honest with you, very candid with you, I never saw any difference. Like it was just my sisters and me. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't like um, I didn't see. I don't know if that's maybe where, like I said, I mean, I'm I'm a gentle dude. Like I don't like confrontation. I'm not. I stay away from, and so I don't know if that it came from that. But again, I mean, my environment was hostile. Like not my home environment, but everything. I grew up in the projects, and like everything around me was pretty hostile. But it was. I don't think. I think in regards to who, if you're asking me who I am, um, if you're asking me or if you're asking just in generality, like, are we like, does that coming from an early on to who somebody is today, I think we all are basically just a collection of experiences, right? um, so I can't say no, it didn't have any impact, because of course it did, right? Of course it had some impact of who I am, but at the same time, like I'm trying to work on my identity in being the person I want to be, right? So um, that a lot of those things, like I'm a big believer in Jim Rome's quote: "You are of the five people who you surround yourself with," right? So in that environment, when I was younger, my environment was chaos and sports and friends. But again, I didn't. Although what's very interesting, although I grew up in where I did grow up, I never felt like I went without. I always had my friends that I grew up with are still my brothers today. Um, because I never knew any different. Like I had friends who were living in the town over, and that parents would not let that person come to my house or come to Brockton because it was like, oh, it's too rough. It was just, it's this imaginary line, but but at the same time, I never, it was, I never, I saw some, I experienced some things, but I never really got into a place where, um, thankfully, that it impacted me so much to that it derailed my trajectory to where I am today. I wouldn't change anything from where I grew up. I really appreciate that. I appreciate that struggle. I appreciate, you name a like I've been working since maybe 9 years old actually. from one thing or another. And that's, and that includes like a paper route, working in a coat room, working construction growing up, mowing lawns, do you name it, I did it. Like so I appreciate, I was always looking for more. And I was in this snow globe, right? I was in the snow globe of my city. Like I think I was telling you last week, I didn't get on a plane until I was 20. First time I flew, man, I was 20 years old, sorry. But and it was
Where did
the
you
reason
go?
why I know it's Santa Barbara. And
Okay.
the reason why I remember that is because I went out there with a fake ID because I was looking at a school, and I got my fake ID taken at Sharky's.
Mm.
So that's why I remember as 20 years old. But yeah, I mean, that was the first time I ever been on a flight, and I left my city. It was crazy, right? I mean, and that's just how it is back, but well, the city that I'm from.
I mentioned you mentioned this last week when we kind of talked about where people that grow up from a underprivileged household, whether if they're single mom or they're just not as fortunate as others, where they have both parents or financially they're more well off and well off households. I remember you said that over there in back home in Brockton, there wasn't a it was a hustle and bustle. There wasn't like, oh yeah, there's different classes where okay, if this guy is like well off, he's okay to talk to other guys that are, not so well off, blue collar workers and stockbrokers or something like that. Where, I would say growing up here in California, it's a little bit more different. You're more judged, and I think that's people in general, right? But you're more judged by where you come from, you know what you have, what your parents have, and clothing, shoes, cars, so I mean, do you feel like that was something that was a blessing for you? Because now that now that you live here in California, you mentioned last week that you noticed the difference too.
Oh yeah, yeah, totally. I remember when I first moved out here. Like I'll repeat this again. But the one thing, like you can go to happy hour in the financial district, right? And you could be at happy hour, and you're sitting next to is a lawyer, a janitor, somebody who's in construction, somebody who's in finance, um, a school teacher, and you're a doctor. So is in everybody. There's no class system,
Mhm.
right? Um, so as long as you can keep up in the conversation, you're in. That's it. That's it. There's no judgment on, oh, I'm not going to talk to this person because they're out of my class. It was just really so as long as you can keep up. That's it. That was the criterion to get into um, that group.
Where do you think that stems from? Because it's different here, or in other places. I'm just saying from, over there and here. What do you,
Yeah, I think it's not everybody, like there's for the most part it's you're more enmeshed with a lot of different people, right? Even for example, like the subway systems, like in the Boston T and even in New York, same thing, right? Um, you're going to work with a lot of the same people, and you're seeing a lot of the same people. You're having those conversations with a lot of the same people, and it's really you're always in each other's space. You're always in each other's environments. So if I were to guess, I really have never really put too much thought into that, but if I were to guess, I think that has a lot to do with it, right? Where when you're exposed, or and I say you, I'm just saying when we're exposed to other people or other environments, it allows us to put down our guard. So always, being on the T, the Boston T, and taking the train everywhere you got to go, like public transportation is a big thing.
Mhm.
So I think being exposed to that group, and there's a lot of apartment buildings, same thing. New York, same thing, right? Like you're on the same elevator as a lot of different people. You're exposed to a lot of different people on the public transit system. So you're having those conversations, you're having those dialogues. So it's no different having that dialogue on the train than it is at the bar. So that's what I'd probably attribute a lot of that to. Whereas in here, you could be living next door to somebody for 10 years. As you know, the conversation never gets past the hello, how you doing, or that might be my trash
Trying
bag.
to avoid each other.
Yeah, exactly. You want to have that garage door to open up because you had a long day, so you want to get right in beforehand. So I think that has a lot to do with it.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah. That was interesting for me because I'm born and raised here in Bay Area, California. So that's and I hear more and more of that where whether it's Texas or other states and they're like, hey, you Californians are so different, or
Yeah.
over here we're not, but then that's interesting. And I was just gonna ask you, I know we talked about this earlier, but this is a subject that I feel like I really want to explore more with you because obviously it meant something to you and it helped you a lot. You mentioned mentors. For me, I didn't, that wasn't something that I thought about a lot as a kid. For some reason, just myself, it was hard for me to go seek help, go ask for people to coach me, to teach me, or just ask for help in general. And the more and more I hear and about from whether it's people that I read about, yourself, and mentor, having a mentor, a teacher, or coach, that's extremely helpful. And like, could you elaborate and touch up a little bit on more of that? That's something that I feel like a lot of people can benefit from.
Sure.
Not be
Yeah. So when I hit, pardon?
No, I'm saying to not be afraid to ask for help.
Sure. Yeah. There is this. There is such thing as a mentor mentee relationship, and what those expectations are. So when I first started going down this journey and kind of figuring out like who I am and started listening to a lot of folks like personal development, right? So I was exposed to a lot of different topics. I was exposed to a lot of different books, exposed to a lot of different what I consider mentors from afar. Um, and then I started realizing that although I have phenomenal people in my life, I didn't have the person who's been where I want to go. I didn't have those shoulders of that giant that stands before me that I can climb on top of and see further than he did. So I was looking for that. So I was looking in a lot of different places where I can find a mentor. And I didn't know the first thing about it. And I ended up finding a mentor, and I paid a lot of money for him each month, but it was well worth it. I moved on since, and he's moved on since, but um, it was really it was helping me get out of my own way, which I still need. I mean, if you think about it now, right? You're into competitive fitness modeling, right? You had a coach.
Mhm.
You're into nutrition. You had a nutritionist or a coach.
Mhm.
Michael Jordan has a coach. So personally developing, I needed a coach. So I looked into a lot of different people, and first person I found was I reached out to a family friend who is light years ahead of me, and he's an older gentleman, fantastic guy, um, and like his I didn't know that mentor mentee expectations at that time. So he was giving me some direction, and he was a sounding board at that point in time, and it was a very valuable, and it still is day. I mean, till this day, is still valued in my life. But it's different, right? He actually helped me negotiate a raise. Like I needed that sounding board.
Can
I
can you
needed somebody.
can you introduce me to him
I
so I can
could,
have him talk? I
yeah,
can have him
so
talk to Gabe.
yeah, exactly. I'll give Gabe a call myself.
Yeah.
I get, I needed those things, right? I needed to know if I was on the right track, if I was off balance, or if I was approaching something, um, not so much right or wrong, because he didn't have the answers for that. And the mentor is not always going to have the answer, but they are going to be a sounding board. I'm like, um, I actually personally started a group. It's, I did, mentors for minors, and I also have a mind body wallet as well. And it's just like-minded folks. And I've mentored others, but it's really it's more of a sounding board, it's more of, and it's, and that relationship is reciprocal too, right? It's really, if I'm taking my biggest commodity, what I realize is time. So if I'm taking the time from you, from somebody else, or if somebody's taking it from me, I'll never get that back. You'll never get this back.
Mhm.
So I'm going to deliver on what we talked about, and vice versa. My expectations are you're going to deliver on what we talked about.
Mhm.
So it took a little bit of time in order to do that, in order to understand that, anyways. So it's helped me a lot. It's helped me propel. And the folks my mentors from afar, like the Jordan Petersons of the world, the Daniel Pinks of the world, like Tim Ferriss, like a lot of these folks who I look up to, that I find nuggets from, and that's helped me. Those are all mentors too. So it doesn't necessarily have to be somebody you know. So that's where I get it from.
I love that you say that, it's more self-discovery, because sometimes you're saying that they don't have the answers, but you find the answer yourself, and that's where you find
Correct.
meaning. That that's such that resonates with me so much. And going with, going back to, for myself too, right? Because I've gotten, the coaches with the fitness stuff, and then the acting stuff, and I feel like there's more that I want to, learn, more things that I want to get into. So I feel like, your coaches, your mentors from afar, like the Jordan Peterson, the people that you listen to, those are great. But having a back and forth communication where it's two-way, I think that that's really helpful. That's what I've been able to learn a lot more about, the craft, or about myself. And I, I want to encourage others, because, when you were talking about that in our last couple conversations, I was like, yeah, I need to be a better, need to do more of that. Michael Jordan had coaches, Kobe had coaches, where you can't do everything yourself, and you don't know everything. And that comes to what we spoke about last week too, humility.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Just it's so interesting that the more in depth you go on a topic, the more you realize you how much you don't know. You know, so I am a student of life. And I'm always trying to find. I know that I can learn something from everyone, right? Um, don't get me wrong. There's some dum dums out there that I just don't want any part of.
No.
But at the same time, like you can always learn something from somebody,
Mhm.
right? So I'm always looking to do that. So I'm always trying to put my guard down, because I was in that position where it was like it was very difficult, even till this day. It's very difficult for me to ask for help. But again, I'm getting in my own way, because you can't you can't do it alone.
Mhm. Mm-mm.
There's no name one company that did it alone.
No.
A company that's extremely successful, that you would really appreciate. You show me one athlete that did it alone.
No, no one.
There's not.
No.
There's not. There's not anybody that did it alone, man. So if you really take that perspective and just have a mind shift, because whether it's your ego, right, that's getting the best of you, or you're thinking, or maybe there's something inside somebody that's like an unworthiness feeling, and you're not feeling like you're worthy enough to ask for help, right? So regardless of what it is, you can unwind that. And there are so many people that want to give a hand, that want to pull you up,
Yes.
right? And if we're not asking, if we're not seeking out, if you're not surrounding yourself with the 5 people
Mhm.
that are going to improve your life, you better reevaluate your 5.
I I'm thankful that I definitely have another one of the 5 in my life, and thank you for it's been it's been great, and I would say to myself and to others, and you know I would be have have more courage to not be as cynical. I think that that's where a lot of some parts of me come from, where like you kind of think that people are are out to not have not give you their best, and you're right, not everyone is out to hurt you or to do bad things to you. There's a lot of people like yourself and what you said, your mentors, they want to give a lending hand. And that's what I experienced a lot as I matured, when I went to seek for help, seek for guidance. You're like, oh man, it's more me than, the world, so, I learned more of that. And we can have some resentment and some bitterness that stems from the past or whatever, but no, it's mentorship, having real true people that are for you, they want good for you. That's so big, and in life, and in your growth.
Yeah. And what do you think it was for you that put a pause on or prevented you from asking for help?
So going back, I always say that we all have a spirit in our inner life of our own,
Mm.
where we have perceptions of different things. So, part of it maybe it's myself, and but I would say that it's not having that sounding voice as a kid. My mom, she was a single mom, and it's like I can work and provide as much as I can, but and her mind was busy, right? She had several kids to take care of. She had work, bills, and she's a foreigner. She came from, we came here in she came here in the early 80s, and then I was born a few years after that. And she didn't have the educational background or the time to try to spend to mentor us, to teach us certain things, and also to there was a huge cultural difference too. So as far as providing and being there for, you know I couldn't have asked for anyone better. Same thing with my sisters and also my friends, but as far as like a sounding voice to help you be more, to have more courage to do the things you want, to enjoy, to go. I told I told my girl this the other day, and I've mentioned to her a few times, and I don't think I've mentioned to too many people, but then I saw myself as a kid. It was more like, I don't know if it's culture or what they teach you, but then you're taught to kind of be quiet, to be shy, to be to kind of hide in the background. So where that was kind of like, hey, don't, why are you going to seek that for? Just stay back here. Whereas
Yeah.
as time went on, I was like, okay, I learned to have more courage to do the things I want, to express myself. And that's part of what I told you, what my one of my mantras is. And I have quotes, and I put on social media here, where it's I want to have the courage to live true to myself, to live true to my heart.
Mm, yeah. I mean, but you know, in all of that, yeah. But what do you think it is that is preventing you
I would say subconsciously, I still have that monkey my shoulder a little bit to where, oh no, don't get me wrong. I've done a much better job at, seeking guidance, seeking help, and actually, asking. For example, you, Dave, I mean, like I wanted, I told you about, my plans, my vision, my dreams and stuff like that. So, that's not easy for someone to tell, especially, 15, 20 years ago, when I was a kid, even maybe 10 years ago, that was hard for me to tell to certain people, right? But now I'm able to be more expressive of the things I want to do and the things I want in my life. And I think that where that truly comes from, as far as being, it's it's maybe fear.
though?
I would say that's, and as I experience more in life, and I learn to, I guess, be more brave.
Sure.
Yeah.
Would you say it's fear of judgment?
A combination, fear of, maybe some fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of, and I don't mean failure like in a sense where, like, I don't, because myself, I noticed this at a young age where I know that I have to be my biggest believer. So I'm not necessarily thinking of failure for what I don't think I can, achieve, because, but then more so that fear that, maybe people, are not, people have a different view and a perception of, your dreams, your goals, to where if you tell them or if you say something, then, it's something where, like, if you share that and then someone has a completely different vision as you, and then they say something that maybe doesn't, you don't like to hear, then it kind of, like, we talked about the ego thing or whatever, the self-esteem thing, it kind of brings you down a little bit, you know what I mean? Where
Yeah.
if you're talking to people meant to, and I'm not talking about, like, being naively optimistic where they just, float your boat, but I'm talking about people that give you constructive criticism, where instead there's some people that will, you know maybe throw stones or, at your goals and your vision.
Sure. A lot of that too, I would like, fear can be looked at in two different ways, right? The acronym for fear that I appreciate is you can have two choices: face everything and run, or face everything and rise. Um, and you're going to, I mean, not you, but impersonally, but I'm saying, a lot of times that negative feedback, how we perceive something being negative because somebody may not agree with your vision or may not agree with your approach. Um, Sometimes that comes from a family member that you didn't expect it to come from, or somebody who is close to you that you didn't expect it to come from. And a lot of times, a lot of that reason is because they're unconsciously trying to protect you, not hurt you. They It's very funny, man. Like you put yourself, they're like, you're gonna put yourself into this situation, and unconsciously for them, they're like, but why would you do that? Or they'll talk negative about it. And oftentimes they're not meaning to. And this goes back to surrounding yourself with the right people. If
Yes.
you don't have those, you don't have to share all your goals.
Hmm.
In my opinion, you don't have to share all your plans. You don't have to share everything that you're doing. I have a lot of different groups of friends,
Hmm.
but there's a few that I have that I can share certain goals with. There's a few that I have that I go to for laughs and just to have a beer and just to have a good time. There's a few that I have to go to say, hey, I'm facing this problem. I'm bumping into this wall. Have you been here before? Do you have any thoughts on the situation? And so as long as you can compartmentalize those different, I'm getting the call, those different, those different groups of friends, and not cluster them all together and share all of those things all at once, you know, that's where you can kind of say, okay, hey, I'm facing this. I'm going to go to this group. Okay, and if you don't have that five, I say five is almost an arbitrary number, but I mean, there's some, I only say that because of Jim Rome. But if you don't have that five, that's going to either propel you, challenge you for that goal, give you some different advice, give you some perspective. Like I said before, go find your five because you may not be there just yet.
That was a great way to end it. I love that. If people aren't aiming the same way as you, you go and seek guidance and seek direction from others too. So I mean, and yeah, so great conversation, Dave. I know you got to go. Thank you for your time, and we'll get back on it the next week or sometime soon. So
Yeah, man. Give me a shout, man. Anytime, buddy.
thanks, bud. It was great. Yeah, have a good night.
Nice talking to you, man. Later.
Hey guys, thank you for staying till the end. So that was my conversation with my buddy David Tessier. I found it so energizing and so insightful hearing him talk about his self-discovery and his quest to become a better version of himself. I hope you all enjoyed it. And if you like our discussion, please make sure you like, subscribe, and share. And leave your comments below what you liked or what you didn't like. Your thoughts, your ideas, live true.